If you're going to start to invest, you really need to understand that your money, your dollars have impact one way or another, right? And so understanding what is important to you and what your values are can be really insightful as you start to invest, because that way you can invest in alignment, so congruent with yourself and what's important to you, so that ultimately you will stay the course. Because the biggest mistake that folks make with investing is pulling their money out at bad times. And so if we can be investing in a way that aligns with what's most important to us, then we're more likely to stay on track with what we're doing instead of reacting in an emotional way.
Hello, and welcome back to the Outdoor Minimalist Podcast. I'm your host, Meg Carney, and I'm an outdoor and environmental writer and author of the book, Outdoor Minimalist: Waste Less Hiking, Camping, and Backpacking. The Outdoor Minimalist Podcast has the goal to give listeners actionable ways to waste less hiking, camping, backpacking, and more during every step of their process. Your impact outdoors starts long before you hit the trail and goes beyond leave no trace ethics. You'll learn how to identify sustainable outdoor brands, how to ask hard questions regarding sustainability, and begin to shift and evolve your mindset to integrate minimalism into all of your outdoor pursuits. In episode 134, we explore a new topic on the show: impact investing. In one of the very first episodes on this podcast, we discussed how living sustainably can actually save you money. But what are you actually doing with all of that money that you're saving? Investing can be a big undertaking, and it's a topic that many people avoid, me included. But aligning investments with my values instead of investing in companies that actively contribute to environmental degradation made this topic a little bit more on brand. Since I'm far from an expert in this arena, I had the pleasure of hosting Laura Lynch. Laura is the founder of the Tiny House Advisor, a financial planner, podcast host, and a tiny house enthusiast. With her personal experience and passion for tiny living, Laura is dedicated to helping others find financial freedom and happiness through alternative lifestyles. Thanks for joining me on the Outdoor Minimalist Podcast today, Laura. It's always fun to connect with a fellow podcaster. And of course, to start, I have to ask my standard question, which is, how did you get involved in outdoor recreation and how does it fit into your life now?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question. I grew up on 10 acres in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, and I guess um, the earth has always been sort of my place where I felt most comfortable. I spent a lot of time just kind of playing in the woods and imagining, fairies and things living in the trees. And so then we did a lot of camping when I was a kid. Both my parents were teachers, so we would, take off for weeks at a time in the summer. And that probably plays into, and I know we're going to talk about, tiny living and kind of, how all that got started. But yeah, I mean, I am not a professional in that I don't have any really strong sports that I participate in outdoors, but I would just much rather be hiking with my dogs than doing anything else.
Same. Anytime I can be out hiking with my dogs is definitely a good day. And if you're watching the video version of the podcast, you're in your tiny house right now, which is really cool to see the inside. It looks really big on a video. I don't know. But since that's kind of like your main focus is tiny house living and the tiny house advisor, tell us how you got invested in tiny living.
Yeah. So back in 2015, I had been missing the West. I had kind of gone to the East Coast after my divorce and, settled in around some family and kind of got, stuck there, got married. And so I was sort of stuck there. And I was really missing the West. I had lived in Nevada for a few years. And so I came back out here, was like chasing Zillow dots on the map, and eventually ended up buying 8 acres here in northern New Mexico. And so then my partner Eric and I said, "Hey, what are we going to do with that land that we just bought?" And so we're like, "Oh, let's just build a house on a trailer and we'll just take it out there and put it on the land," because we didn't have the time. We were both in, corporate jobs at the time. And, 2 weeks vacation is not enough time to, go out and build a house. So we built a house at our place in Florida, and we towed it across the country and put it on our land here in New Mexico, and we visited a couple times a year. It was kind of our getaway. And then the pandemic came, and all of a sudden, I was like, why are we paying this stupid mortgage and living this life so conventionally? We could be living, debt free in our tiny house that we built ourselves in a place that we much prefer to be at. And so, how do we transition from our normal life to our tiny life? And it just was a matter of kind of breaking down all the steps and figuring out, a 2.5 year journey to go from the normal American dream path into our tiny living path.
That's awesome. I mean, it seems like a pretty natural progression. And I feel like the pandemic for a lot of people really kind of shifted like their priorities and values. And it's like, okay, what am I actually doing here? And why am I living my life like this? And today's episode, like a big focus is going to be on money, which is kind of like one of your areas of expertise. And so I'm sure you learned a lot and a lot has changed since you transitioned to tiny living. So do you mind talking a little bit about how living in a tiny house, like minimizing your material goods, things like that, have impacted how you view and manage money?
Yeah, for sure. It's so interesting. I started my career as a financial advisor in a big, large, corporate environment, and never quite felt at home. Love the work of helping people realize their goals and plan for their future, but at the same time, planning for, just a lot of more wealth for the wealthy didn't resonate with me. And so, by kind of making this transition of both my career and my personal life into tiny living, I've been able to pivot my entire work focus to help other people do this lifestyle, which the tiny house and being mortgage free enabled me to launch my own firm. And launching my own firm was really a requirement to move. It was all intertwined. And what it's really allowed me to do is step away from maybe a prescribed philosophy around investing that a lot of the large brokerage houses have, and start a search within myself of what is my investment philosophy and what do I think that folks living in tiny living really want their money to do, and what kind of impact do they want to have, and what's important to them, and how do we restructure our thoughts around financial planning and investing to align with this sort of small group of people that aren't doing a conventional thing and aren't trying to grow their money in order to have a vacation home on the beach and you know grow their wealth in a traditional way that we think of with financial advisors and financial planners. And so I've kind of gone from, okay, let's step away from the very traditional way of thinking about investment portfolios. Let's think about it now a little bit more of aligning money with values. And as I've gotten further into that, I've even started to understand that there's more to financial resilience than just your portfolio. And really, we get so focused on saving so much. I need to save so much for myself for retirement, or save so much to make sure I'm never going to run out of money in my whole life. But at the same time, money is only one small piece of our overall resilience. And how can we expand that to think about all the different forms of capital that we have in our lives, and how important relationships play into that, and look back historically and think about how people built their security for themselves, and think about it in a bigger way, because ultimately with climate crises and all of the other things going on, we don't know how portfolios are going to perform ultimately differently. And so we all have to be thinking in a more holistic way when it comes to resilience. So it's been quite the journey of exiting a really sort of in the box mentality and expanding and exploring what it means for me now and for my clients that are living this lifestyle.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And before we get into kind of the nitty-gritty of like how to align your values with investing and impact investing and all of those things. I do kind of want to ask a follow up as far as like resilience with finances, especially as we age and things like that. So, if you don't mind and we're able to give kind of like a high level view of like what are the factors that likely contribute the most to being financially resilient?
Yeah. So when we think about financial resilience, a lot of times we think about, in my case, I'm child free. Like, who's going to take care of me in my old age? So, you can do a financial calculation through a financial planning tool that you either get through an advisor, or you can get, there's lots of tools out there to figure out how much money do I need to save in order to make sure that I can meet my cost of living for, the rest of my life or the rest of my retirement or during a period of taking a break from work or whatever. That's pretty easy. We understand what, rising prices do over time. So there are tools out there to help you figure out the money part of how do I make sure that I can create financial resilience. But as I mentioned earlier, what we often do with that money is that we invest it in a portfolio, and that portfolio is going to be impacted by what is going on in the markets and also what is going on in the climate, in the earth at large, right? With climate crisis and changes going on in the economy, changes happening in the labor market. So there's a lot of uncertainty, I would say, kind of going on in the world today. And so just being dependent on I know how much money I have to save is probably not enough for us. We really need to be thinking about maybe I need to be able to grow a little bit of my own food, right? Because that's something that we just need to survive all the time. And where is my water and my power coming from? And I know all these are all things that, you know very well, and you focus on so much of the entirety of what's going on in our environment today. But I think that we can all be thinking of what are the basics that I need in life. I need to be able to feed myself. I need to be able to shelter myself, the basic needs that we have. And how can I maybe create some duplications or layers of security there instead of just assuming that the power is always going to show up and that the water is always going to show up. How can I maybe collect some rainwater? How can I grow a little bit of my own food, as I said? So I think we can all do a better job of not being solely dependent upon the infrastructure that exists and has taken care of us, because as we saw in the pandemic, things do fall apart. And so we can all do a little bit better job of looking around and figuring out what is it I need to take care of myself and how can I maybe do a little bit more of this for myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Things can fall apart and they can fall apart very quickly, as we all learned and probably remember. um,
Yes.
yeah, no, I like that. It's a good high level overview of like how all of these factors kind of play into every aspect of life and the things that are required for a living. And so, if we are kind of making financial plans for our future, investing can obviously be a really good and valuable way to help us build wealth and maybe have a little more of that resilience as we move into retirement and things like that. But if someone listening is really new to investing, I don't want to spend too much time on this part, but would you be able to just kind of explain some of the basics of it and kind of like the best place to start?
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about this in kind of three parts. So philosophically, systematically, and logistically. And so philosophically, I think for anyone listening, if you're going to start to invest, you really need to understand that your money, your dollars have impact one way or another, right? And so understanding what is important to you and what your values are can be really insightful as you start to invest, because that way you can invest in alignment So, congruent with yourself and what's important to you so that ultimately you will stay the course. Because the biggest mistake that folks make with investing is pulling their money out at bad times. And so, if we can be investing in a way that aligns with what's most important to us, then we're more likely to stay on track with what we're doing instead of reacting in an emotional way. So, philosophically, understanding your values and understanding that your dollars have impact and trying to bring those two things together, what's important to you and your dollars. Systematically, it's important to understand that investing is not the same as buying a stock or buying Bitcoin or putting money in a slot machine. Investing is a long term play. And it is about sitting down and understanding, hey, I have, $100 a month that I can start thinking about paying my future self. So I want to start paying my future self on a regular basis. And I can do this with $100 a month. And here's my plan. And here's how I'm going to hold myself accountable to this, and understand that you're doing this for the long term, and that it's not as simple as putting some money in, a Robinhood account and, making 1,000% and taking it out tomorrow. Most people aren't successful with that. So really investing is a long-term strategy. It is not the same as, get rich quick or gambling. So understanding that difference is important. And then logistically, there are some great DIY platforms out there. And of course, you can hire a professional to work with. So there's lots of great tools available. Betterment is one that, creates, sort of a good profile for you, and you just put some money in it. It's a systematic way of doing it. Or you could hire an advisor to work with. But that's the logistical piece. I think the first two are far more important to get straight.
Yeah, and then the logistical piece can kinda come after once you kind of are more in alignment with those things.
For
And,
sure.
I mean, with the philosophical piece, obviously, that's gonna play a big part into today's discussion about impact investing. And so what is impact investing?
Yeah, so this is great. So impact investing actually has it's the next iteration of what we used to know sort of as ESG investing, environmental social governance. So in the past, there's been some movement towards taking the whole investing universe and screening out the worst offenders. So, maybe we think of, certain oil companies as an example. But impact investing instead says, I want to be intentional with these dollars and understand that these dollars are going to have impact. And so, how can I align the dollars with the best that is out there, the best companies that are making, good solutions for our current and future problems, companies that are really focused on equity, companies that are really focused on diversity, companies that are really focused on limiting their greenhouse gas emissions. So, with impact investing, instead of just screening out the worst, it's really pinpointing the best and investing there. And very often, those businesses that are creating the solutions for the crises that we're facing or for our future are actually going to perform better, because they are being so intentional instead of just continuing to do business as business has always been done. So it's important to kind of understand that by pinpointing certain areas that you want to invest in, you are eliminating some other areas of the market, and so your performance may be different than the overall market. But impact investing is really saying, how can I be intentional with these dollars? And so, again, there's kind of the philosophical element, there's the logistical piece of it, and we can break these down in a second if you want. But really, the bigger picture is, how are my dollars affecting those key elements, those values that are important to me, whether it is diversity and equity, whether it is the climate, whether it is, companies that are taking good care of their employees. How is it that I want my dollars to impact the economy?
Yeah, so I guess I'm not sure if this would fit into the description of the 3 different, parts of investing or not, but If it does, great.
Yeah.
But I'm just kind of wondering, how would someone that maybe they want to transition to impact investing, or they're starting out new to investing and they're like, this is how I'm just going to do it from the get-go. How would
Mhm.
they identify like what makes a good impact investment?
Yeah. So there's a broad range there of focus areas. So, understanding what it is, which impact you're trying to make, whether it's climate related or greenhouse gas emission related or equity and diversity related. There are asset managers, which are the people who create funds with strategies specifically towards these values. So there are asset managers out there that are focused on gender lens investing. So really focusing on women and girls and how these dollars are impacting women and girls' livelihoods and lives. There are asset managers out there that are eliminating carbon from their portfolios. There are ones that are out there investing in new water technologies or new energy technologies. So you can do, a lot of sort of Googling to find out what asset managers are focused on very specific areas that you want to have impact on. And then, of course, there are folks that are out there that are helping investors kind of screen through all of this and put together their portfolio designed around their values. So I help clients specifically in this area to, say, I want to focus on impact investing and I want to focus on this area. And that way they don't have to do the research and I can help them put together. So there's professionals out there in the financial world, both from a manager of investment funds, as well as investment sort of consultants that can help put together exactly, the type of theme that you want to focus on.
Yeah, I feel like there are a lot of different resources available. And like, as someone that is kind of like new to investing, working with someone that knows a lot more than me is way less stressful than trying to figure it all out on my own.
Yeah, this is still a little like, on the edges though. So it's not as easy to find as just, low cost investing or systematic investing or whatever. Impact investing, you do have to dig a little bit harder to find folks that are focused on that. But it's definitely out there.
That's good to know. Adventuring plans on your calendar? Remember to grab your Lava Linens travel towel on your way out the door. Founded by a mother daughter team, Lava Linens crafts durable, luxurious travel towels as a more sustainable and better performing alternative to microfiber and cotton towels. Powered by flax, hemp, and tencel, they're designed to be by your side for years to come. Use the code Outdoor Minimalist for 15% off your next order. So, I guess you mentioned a few of these and kind of like the reasons that people may pursue impact investing. And I'm guessing like most of the listeners, if they're here on the Outdoor Minimalist podcast, like tuning in, they more than likely like they want to have a better relationship with the earth and lower their like overall footprint. And so, like,
Mhm.
what would some benefits be to like create or not creating that sort of, is that the right phrase? In creating that kind of portfolio?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that that's exactly the point of impact investing because whatever dollars, when you invest in a company, what you're doing is you're buying a portion of ownership of that company if you buy a stock. And so you're giving those dollars to that business to run their strategy and their business operations. And so you want to understand that if you're giving those dollars, buying those shares of a stock of a company that's not caring about the earth, it isn't and is being completely extractionist in how they're making money, you're supporting their operation in the way that they do business. And so, for all of your listeners who, like me, are so focused on their impact on the earth, we really want to think about putting our dollars with companies that are trying to regenerate in some way or circular economy or focused on planting trees or reducing emissions or whatever it is. And there's of course a whole lot of greenwashing out there, as I know, right? And so really finding the right businesses to support is important. And then I think it's also important to understand that impact investing goes beyond just what we think of as an investment portfolio in businesses. And we can think about impact investing in our own communities because there are ways to support regenerative agriculture, as an example, or local nonprofits to regenerate within our community, to say, hey, these dollars can be in support of a local credit union that supports local farmers, or there's lots of different ways to put our dollars to work besides buying shares in a company that ultimately is part of the capitalistic system. And there's you can't probably get completely out of there, but at the same time we can think beyond just traditional investing in businesses through stocks and think about how can we invest in our community, how can we support and regenerate the livelihood and the great work being done inside of our community. And maybe that doesn't mean that we get a dividend like we do from a stock, but there's going to be resources in the community that we can then be a part of. So lots of different sort of thinking a little bit bigger, instead of just, okay, I'm going to put some money in a Roth account and I'm going to try to direct it to the companies doing the best work.
Yeah, absolutely. Like a more holistic view, and contributing more to like kind of building the local, I don't know if I want to say economy, but in a way, like the more the community is uplifted, I feel like it contributes nicely to a local economy. And then there can be more localized production and supply and things like that.
Yes. Yeah, I'm definitely expanding my understanding of this through. I just did a permaculture design certificate class. So, permaculture taught me a lot about alternative economies and alternative capital and alternative currency and all these things that I had never encountered before in my financial life. And so, thinking about how the social relationships and the social fabric of your community is such a part of that resilience that we were talking about earlier. So how do you invest there too? And it not just be about let me, hoard as much money in my portfolio to take care of myself because ultimately that's fragile too. And so, thinking about our community as part of our investment is really important.
Yeah, I love that. Permaculture is such an interesting and valuable concept. And I love that it's becoming like a little bit more mainstream. I feel like it used to be like really on the fringes, and now it's like a lot of people are interested in pursuing those types of activities, which is great. Another piece that I think historically a lot of women, like their management of money, as most women likely know, they didn't always have access to it. And so there is maybe a little bit more of a gender gap in terms of investing, like how we invest our money, how we grow our wealth, and things like that. And I would say, like, things are changing, like, pretty positively. You would be able to speak more on that than me, but, like, even the resources that I feel like I have now versus the resources that were available to, like, my mom or my grandma or something like that are much faster. So, would you be able to speak a little bit on, like, how, as a woman, the landscape has changed, in the last few years, and also how we can, like, confidently work on growing our wealth?
Yes, I love it. Oh my gosh. So there is a lot of trillions. I forget the exact numbers, like 52 trillion or something. There's a lot of money passing to women through generational wealth transfer right now. Huge. Women already like make more money on average than men. They're getting more college degrees. They're going to control more assets in the future if they don't already. Women, ladies, gals, we have to realize that that money is a way of exerting our preferences and our values, right? Because if we control the wealth and the income, we control the direction of the economy. And therefore, if we can be powerful in thinking about our way of influencing the future through our dollars and stop thinking about money as taking care of everybody else, or however we have individually thought about it in the past, and think about it as our way of wielding our influence in the future, that can be so impactful. And that's sort of, you know, really big picture call to action there. I think women get a really, bad rap in the patriarchy around money, right? And so I think that we have done a great job of making sure that everybody is fed and clothed and taken care of. And yet, right now, there's this huge shift is happening. So we have an opportunity to change the direction of our culture and the direction of corporations and the direction of our communities if we're intentional about it. And so the hardest part with money is getting started. It's kind of like doing your taxes, right? When we sit down in January and you start getting those tax forms, it's like, oh my gosh, I have to put all this stuff together. And what do all these forms mean, right? It's the same way with financial planning or understanding your net worth, or, your income and expenses. The hardest part is sitting down to the massive confusion that money can sometimes be for all of us, even me. Tax time is a bear, and understanding where all the money is coming in and where it's going out, and where should I be devoting my dollars. It's a lot, right? But if we can just get started with it and have some compassion with ourselves to make just incremental progress, you know, get a little bit more knowledge, watch maybe a webinar, kind of take a little of interest in this area of our lives, we truly have so much opportunity to make such big change, and direct the future the way that we would like to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't really have anything to add to that. That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's really true. It's really interesting, like how like socially culture can then impact like who is holding that wealth and like the general like corporate systems. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like a interesting flow of how it all impacts each other. And I had a follow-up question and now I'm really blanking. So dang it. I thought it was a good one too, but not good enough for my brain to remember. Okay. So let's see. We're kind of, I'm sad that I forgot. Okay.
Dog shake.
I hear a pup. Okay, so regardless of gender, then, if
Mhm.
we want to feel empowered to make our money and our investments align with our values, what are some resources that you would recommend for beginners, experts, anyone?
Yeah. So understanding, of course, our values is that, first piece that I talked about. There's a values worksheet on my website that's free download. So, there's lots of, ways to figure out your values. That's just one that I have out there. And then from there, of course, then, understanding how our money aligns with our values, and not just in investing, but also in spending. So you talk about this so much, right? About how people are using money and consuming for their outdoor recreational activities. And so understanding how our money is impacting in our spending and also our investing. Um, and then there are some, as I mentioned, there's some great resources out there that focus on those specific impact investing. There's a group called Invest for Better, where you can sign up for classes and learn about how to invest for better. They've got webinars. I think that's a pretty well known organization out there that's helping people educate themselves on how to do better with their money. And certainly, working with an advisor who's aligned with your values can also be a helpful resource too. So lots of good ideas out there for understanding what's important to you and how to take action on that.
Yeah, I'll have to check out your value sheet. And I'll be sure to link to that as an offering and your website, and then the other resources that you mentioned. But with that, how can listeners learn more about you, check out your podcast and your website, Tiny House Advisor?
Yeah. So, the Tiny House Advisor, advisor is spelled with an E, not an O. The tinyhouseadvisor.com is my website, and all my links to social and things are on there. Pretty easy to find me. And my podcast is Less House, More Moolah. So, focus on how, living small can be the biggest lever in your life that you can pull to free up some of your income to therefore make a bigger impact in life. So we talk about the tiny lifestyle as well as, all things financial when it comes to that too. And yep, so that is how to track me down. I'm most active on LinkedIn.
Yeah, same. I don't know. I need to do other platforms more actively, but I will be sure to share all of your social media links and your website in the show notes so people can access that really easily. But thank you so much, Laura, for taking the time to explain impact investing. And as someone that is new to investing, I feel like the more I learn about it and the more people I meet that are doing it actively, the less scary it becomes. So if anyone is in the same place as me or is like scared of investing, I feel like just get out there, listen to more podcasts like Laura's, and try it.
Yes. Yes. I really identify with that scared piece because back in the Great Recession, I saw what happened with, the market, and I had just bought my first house in Las Vegas in 2007. And so when I sat in my first meeting at my employer about 401ks and putting money in there, I'm like, why would I ever do that? Right. So I'm not that far away from that investing is scary piece. I came to the financial services profession from completely outside, having no idea what a stock or a bond was. So I totally get it. And yet at the same time, it is kind of the only way we have to overcome rising costs of over time. So it is an important tool in the toolbox.
Thanks for listening. And if you like what you hear, let me know. Leave a review and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Instagram at outdoor.minimalist.book, on YouTube, or subscribe to our weekly newsletter at theoutdoorminimalist.com. For even more updates, other educational resources, and to help build an outdoor community with the shared goal to create a better outdoor space as we recreate.